This is yet another response to Varioblast's DoNotDogfeck challenge. It's turning into a bit of a series this, so what I'll probably do is go back and rename the other 3 or 4 I've made, including this one of course, and see if I can make it, just make it more coherent I suppose really, when you look at the titles. But in my last video I was talking about the infant brain and how it's how that for the first couple of years of life are largely developmental. You know, you come into the world with an undeveloped brain, or the first draft of what constitutes the mind, and then that has to be written on and updated by experience in order to provide to fully develop consciousness and cognition, and all of the details of that. All the behaviours that fall out of that cognition. They have to be built in the real world through real world engagement. And that in turn, as I think I said in my previous video, that necessity for an undeveloped brain which builds itself in real world contexts is a product of the particular nature of our beings as highly adaptable bipeds with with big heads and a small pelvic girdle really. So it's to do with that. Anyhow, what I finished the last video on was just talking about a passing reference to the teen brain, the teenaged brain, and how yes, after the first couple of years of life there's an enormous amount of pruning goes on then, but then there's a second set of pruning that takes place during the teen years. And the wind's picked up here, I hope the sound's alright in this video. From the age of about 14, well puberty really, through to sometimes the early 20s even, late teens, early 20s, a lot of the connections in the brain are once again culled or refined or weighted differently. A lot of the final wiring, the final drafts if you like, perhaps not completely final drafts, but the mature drafts are put into place then. Okay. So yeah, there's a few things around that really. I mean, the first thing is this really great book I read years ago called The Nurture Assumption by Judith Harris, which is quite interesting in many ways. It kind of combines some evolutionary psychology stuff with a relatively new take on the development of adolescence really, and the significance of those years to development.
How are you?
All right. And what she was saying in that, and she's an interesting person apart from anything else. She wasn't a biologist or an evolutionary biologist. She came from way outside the discipline and was critiqued quite a bit for that. But the strength of her research was just so strong that people couldn't fault it, even though she was kind of considered a bit of an outsider. But her contention in that is that the emphasis that people place, or tend to have placed in the 20th century, on parental influence on child development, partly things coming out of Freud, but also in just kind of self-help parenting books like the Dr. Spock stuff, and all the Bowlby stuff about motherly love, and all that kind of research took place, which really placed the emphasis on child development on parents. She basically says, way overstated. Parents are very important in providing nurturing environments and not fucking the kid up. Not doing the they fuck you up your mum and dad stuff. But the real socialisation takes place outside of the family home in peer groups, and particularly in the teen years. Not exclusively in teen years, but particularly in teen years. And she cites evidence really straightforward evidence, like the children of immigrants. The children of immigrants growing up in another country don't get the accents of their parents, they pick up the accents of their friends and the behaviour of their friends. Obviously, but except it's only obvious when you think about it. And if parental influence was the key formative procedure, then why would that happen? And she's also citing things like just the kind of tribalism that exists amongst teenagers, which I can testify to. I've got 2 16-year-old twin lads. I must do some twin studies on them at some point actually. But they're very tribal. It's really intense the amount of care and detail that they put into things like wearing exactly the right trousers at just the right elevation. Those kind of details, which is absolutely part of that. This taking your cues from your peers that happens in teen years is, in Judith Harris's analysis, really, really important. And it's during that time that this second pruning of the brain takes place. So all the connections that are forged at that point, the wiring together and the firing together that decides which bits of the neuronal network are prioritised, that happens in that context, in the context of building a social life with other people like you. And it kind of makes sense in a way. It's in your teen years, or at least historically it's been in our teen years, when it's been most important. My dog's going to go in this field, I'll have to duck under this fence. It's been that, oh god, hang on. Yeah. It's been in those years that it's been most important to get along with people. And it still is, but only in a kind of ritualistic fashion now. But I suppose historically that was the year when you really put your tribe in place, and you picked your mates, and and you found your fellow warriors, and you know, all those kind of stuff would be put in place. So it'd be absolutely essential to fit in with a social species during those years, and that seems to be still the case. You know, what the details are of that socialisation are not written in stone. You know, my kids are into kind of BMX and skateboard culture, but if they were in a different community, presumably they'd be goths or emos or something else, I don't know. So yeah, it's not the details that matter, it's the power of the pruning process steering, in this case, teenagers towards the socialisation and the adopting of behaviour which is appropriate to that social group. But I suppose, like in the last video, you know, that seems to me it's another really fragile time. I mean, the human psyche is such a fucking complex thing, isn't it? It seems to me like it's so easily broken, and I'm certainly aware of that as a dad. You know what I mean? I'm doing a great job, but I am constantly aware of how fragile this thing is. You know what I mean? It's like I sometimes visualise this brain that got inside their heads. You know, doing this pruning process going on through it. And being a dad is like trying to make a souffle, you know, or trying to build a Jenga tower or something like that. It's like you've got to get this right, you've got to just get the process right, because if you're not careful, the whole thing could just come tumbling down on you, and you end up with a pair of dog fuckers, you know what I mean, instead of healthy, normal twins. Anyhow, fingers crossed they're okay so far. No dog feckers in the family at the moment. Anyhow, that's just an addition, really, just another possible alternative to genetic origins for detailed social behaviour, particularly detailed sexual behaviour, such as dog fecking or kind of aggressive male sexuality.